Yeah, clearly my fault. So the homeowner was in front of it when it dropped.
Oh no!
Wow.
She's downstairs. I'm just shooting upstairs, and I was nowhere even close to the cat. Didn't like.
You must hate cats.
I was about to say,
you threw the cat
Google
off.
review.
It was
Aaron
intentional
hates
infliction
cats.
And
of
that's what
emotional
Aaron
stress.
killed my
Yeah,
cat.
and this is what I'm afraid of. You can say all those things,
Yeah.
and I have no defense
And I
against
can
you.
snap
When
both.
do we crawl over to OSHA land?
16 employees,
Okay.
buddy.
So it's free legal
we got
advice.
some time. We got some time. I actually
Yeah.
get paid just to confront people, so the managers
Just
don't
to
have
yell
to
at people all
sometimes.
day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's not yelling, but
So how do you
Arguing.
Firm
constructively
instruction.
So let's take
the story of my life.
Aaron's business, who doesn't have the proper legalese set up, as far as I know.
you don't know that.
You have a limitation of liability.
Based off
and
the story you
that,
just told me,
Advice.
I'm still going after you, Cody.
Bring it on.
I know where you live.
I don't know.
So
Going against Tim's kind of scary.
This is not a place where the way that we resolve conflict is we go kill their son, like, or kneecap them.
Yeah.
You know? This is not that kind of place.
So on today's podcast, we have a special guest, Buckley from ThompsonMcMullan.
That's correct.
Yeah, very good. And I think this is so pertinent, right? Because we think about businesses and we think about business owners, and one of the things that is almost for a lot of business owners who are starting a business, secondary, which is the legal requirements of their business and the areas that are involved with that front that creatives don't think about out of the gate. Like Aaron, I think that's probably of the 100 things when you were launching your video business, like 99.
I'd say probably 102. 102 is where I was thinking about
It's
these
not
things.
sexy to talk about it,
Yeah.
or at least when you're starting a business. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, I'll deal with it when the time comes. I would say you would
Well,
probably agree
what
with
is
that.
the it you're thinking of there? I mean, you guys are business owners and entrepreneurs.
Being
the
sued.
The it is a thing you don't even know. Like, you don't even know what the it is until a crisis occurs.
Yeah.
So, I think that's part of what you pay for when you hire an outside general counsel or a business litigator like myself and my team. Is we are every day living the it that you're not living.
Yeah.
And the it can be, my landlord wants to throw me out of my space. Can he do that? Can she do that? I don't know. Now I need to look at this, and maybe there's some language in the lease that you're not sure about. Well, now you really, really need a lawyer. It's a crisis. Like, your building is a critical part of your infrastructure right here in this room. You guys have a lot of stuff here. There's a lot of adjustments we made before we got started here. There's all kinds of stuff that would have to be taken down and moved somewhere else. Do you want to hire someone that you have to trust with the physical infrastructure of your building after the crisis? And to give you an analogy for a second, think about if you ever been in a car accident. Have you tried to put the seatbelt on during the car accident?
I attempted.
Yeah, right. How'd that work out for you?
We'll find out.
Yeah. So you get in the car every day, and you take the time to stop and put your seatbelt on. And if you have children like I do, you make them put their seatbelt on.
Yeah.
I put my seatbelt on twice today while driving around. You guys put your seatbelt on probably before you came here today. Did you expect to get in a car accident?
No.
You were consciously thinking, I'm getting in a car accident, so I'm going to put the seatbelt on when you pulled out of wherever you live.
Mm-hmm.
Probably not. A lot of people can drive around for a really long time without a seatbelt on. It makes no difference whatsoever. But when the crisis comes, having that seatbelt on might be the difference between life and death. And when the crisis comes, having a lawyer that you already knows you, has maybe helped you build seatbelts into your business, like backup plans and limitations of liability in your contract, ways to enforce your contract and get your attorney's fees, can mean the difference between life and death in your business. And it's not sexy, and it's not people that are having a creative idea and wanting to monetize it in some way or want to change the world in some way, or thinking, gosh, how am I actually going to get people to pay? You just start from the position, oh, they're going to pay. They're going to pay.
Yeah, it's just the reckless belief in humanity, right?
Well, it is, yes. So, and you're allowed to continue in that reckless belief in humanity as long as you hire a professional who assumes that everyone you're doing business with is going to lie.
Yeah.
And is going to not pay you, which is really my job.
There you go. That comes from a pretty dark place, but it's important, right?
But I play bad cop.
Yeah.
And then after, I'm done with playing bad cop, I go coach children on a baseball field or a football field and have a great time doing it. But during the day,
yeah.
I am the guy you hire, And you get to think, oh, I'm making a deal with, Jane Doe, and it's going to make us so much money, and it's such a good idea. And you can keep thinking that way so long as you let me in on the deal at some point, hopefully early, and I can draft some things for you, and I can look at it, and I can be the one who's like, yeah, I know Jane Doe is, loving what you're selling right now, but what if she doesn't like how it comes out later?
Right.
What if she can't pay you later? Is there?
I actually had an incident living in an apartment complex, and I had military orders to move away, and it was actually in the lease agreement that we were able to give them that, and they tried to say, oh, we removed that clause. I was like, well, I never got an updated version of that.
Right.
So we had to fight that with litigation.
But that's not even legal, though, from a federal standpoint. You can't, for people who are active duty.
Well, some people will still consider that as breaking a lease. Even if you're married and you have stuff like that and you still have a lease agreement, it's like, yeah, I have no choice. I have to move.
Well,
right?
It's the same thing if you're employed and you get called active orders. Like that happened to my dad years ago. He got called up on active duty, and the company tried to fire him, so they didn't have to pay him. And it didn't work out.
And
in
just
their
because
favor.
something's, and I think you would agree with this, Buckley, just because something's illegal doesn't mean people wouldn't try to
do
take
it,
advantage of
Right.
loopholes,
So
right?
I think it was Thomas Paine. I could be getting that wrong, but the famous quote from the Revolutionary Era was, "A right that you can't enforce is no right at all." And
It's not on paper. It doesn't exist.
people constantly forget that fact, although it's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
Like people are like, "Oh no, they owe me the money." I'm like, "What do they owe you? When do they owe you? And what happens if they don't pay you?" Did we write all that down somewhere? You have in your mind what you think is going to happen. They have in their mind what they think is going to happen. They have reasons. You have reasons.
And they have they have a contract in their head. They have stipulations like, well, it didn't work for me, so I'm not going to pay.
Right. It's not
But
what
the work
it's not what I
got
thought
done
I was
anyway.
buying. It's not, it's not. And a lot of service industry, like you guys, you get paid along the way or after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
I do a lot of construction litigation. You get paid along the way or after the fact. It's very, very difficult to describe what you're doing and what the scope of work is, but also what the level of performance is going to be. I mean, like if I say, go make me a table, what kind of table?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
So
What
I
kind of wood is
photographed
it made out of? Yeah,
or metal?
materials or
Yeah.
metal.
Granite? Like, what are we doing here?
You had a great story. You were working, I think there were wholesalers or people in the real estate area here in Richmond. They were using some sort, because a lot of business owners do this when they start out. They use some sort of free template they found online, and they just copy and paste and hopefully replace all the verbiage that correctly needs to be. Like, I'll change the business name. Or I've seen other investors take parts of other contracts from, I like how this says. And also I like what this says, and just mumble jumble all together. And that ended up biting them in the
So
butt there.
there's all kinds of problems. I mean, I've seen people in the last couple of years. I've seen people that have given away hundreds of thousands of dollars, like high net worth individuals that are like, "Oh, I went to a seminar and I heard that I could get a 15% rate of return, and it was practically guaranteed. It's backed up by real estate. That's got to be better than stocks." And they're giving sight unseen from like Arizona, a builder in the Richmond area, which is how it came to my office. $800,000-$900,000, and the total paper that covers this transaction, it was 2 pages long.
Oh, no.
And that includes the signatures.
Oh,
Yeah.
no.
And I was like, whoa, like, what did you give it for? When were you getting it back? How are we going to account for budgeting? Oh, well, he told me that the budget was going to be this. And like, I don't even see that in the paper, but let's say that was in the paper. For everything that you want a term for, you need to have a consequence for if it's not done. Like, if
That's
you're just-
absolutely terrifying.
Oh,
yeah,
my gosh.
it's crazy. The people that I have a couple right now that that people are investing on the side, and they have no contract at all. No contract at all. They just have given a person
Scary.
$250,000.
The user agreements for like a coffee shop Wi-Fi are longer than 2
Yeah.
pages.
Captive
then-
portals.
Then, to Ryan's point, you can have the other extreme where people have like a 24-page document, but it's clearly stuff they just liked the language of themselves.
And some parts contradict other parts of the contract.
And a regular amateur error, I would like to say it's only amateurs, just occasionally lawyers do this too, is you have a part of the contract you really think is important, so you write it like early in the contract, and then later in your mental process, you're like, I really want to mention this again because it's really important. And you write it like on page 3 again, but you don't use exactly the same words that you wrote about it on page 1. Guess which version is going to be used when you get in trouble? The one that's worst for you, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Because if you write the contract, there's a presumption in the law that any ambiguity is going to be construed against you, and you're going to have to overcome that presumption. And if the party that signed the contract, if it's written in 2 places or 3 places or 4 places, real stories, real train wrecks, then the person who's signing it says, well, I didn't write any of this, so we're going to take the one that's most likely to benefit me and whatever the dispute is. The thing is, you don't know what the dispute is. I am reasonably good at understanding future disputes because I've been through them literally every day. There's been several today. I sat in your parking lot for about 15 minutes after I got here trying to get off the phone call on another one. But that's, you don't know what the dispute's going to be. I have some insight into what the disputes might be, but I don't know what the disputes are going to be. You definitely do not know what the disputes are going to be. So you want the contract to be super clear. You want it to talk about whatever it's talking about in one place and one place only. And then you want to be able to know when you get into a contract how you're getting out of it. Assuming that whatever contract you're entering, you're not entering for the rest of your life and your children's lives and their children's lives. Assuming it's going to end at some point in time, you need to write how it's going to end. Like, so many business owners are like, oh, I have a proposal, I have an invoice, I have a work order. Like, and what happens if you don't show up for whatever reason? Or what happens if they don't pay you for whatever? How are you getting out of this? And many business owners are like, oh, I have a great idea and people are going to pay for it. And of course they're going to pay for it. Why wouldn't they pay for it? It's great stuff. Like, someone won't pay for it. It's going to happen.
Yeah, I've run a real estate photography business for a long time, and one thing that just kind of lingers in the back of my head is like, somewhere at some point there's going to be some grandfather clock that gets knocked over that's irreplaceable,
Right.
or or a dog knocks it over that's completely separate from me, or what happened sort of recently, nothing came of it, but a cat jumped off the banister to its death.
Oh,
And,
wow.
Well, I
Wait,
thought
it was a
how,
kit- it
how
wa-
does that cats
it
have
must
like
have
9
used
lives?
up the other 9 lives.
Yeah.
So.
It was on its 9th. So
Yeah.
no, it was a
Things
kitten.
happen.
It was a kitten. And what was terrifying to me is that I was 10 feet away from this cat when it happened, and I was the only one around.
Right.
And
So it's
the
clearly your
homeowner was clearly
Obviously.
my fault. So the homeowner was in front of it when it dropped.
Oh no.
Wow.
She's downstairs. I'm just shooting upstairs, and I was nowhere even close to the cat. Didn't
You
like.
must hate cats.
I was about to say
you threw the cat
Google
off.
review.
It was intentional
hates
infliction
cats.
And
of
that's what I-
emotional
Aaron
distress.
killed my
Yeah,
cat.
and this is what I'm afraid of. You can say all those things,
Yeah.
and I have no defense
And I
against
can
you.
sue you for them. And a lot of people don't realize this until they get sued for the first time. I have so many conversations that go like this. Right, but they're wrong. Can you just tell them that they're wrong, that I didn't do the thing? I can, for an hourly rate and filings. And then, well, how much? I mean, can you just like write it in one letter? And no, I have to file with the court, and then they're going to have their story, and you're going to have your story, and the court doesn't know either of you. And it's not just going to go away because I tell them they're wrong. Like, we're going to have a whole process here, and it's going to
Gotta
take a
prove it.
long time. We're going to have to prove to completely independent people, or at least a judge, that you're right and they're wrong. But I know I'm right. I'm like, this conversation I've had, like, it's like a 45-minute to an hour conversation.
Like
of having
talking
their
to a
mental
toddler.
acuity.
So
It's like starting over again and teaching them a new language. I'm like, no, I understand you're right. I believe you. They like get upset with you, and they're like, don't you believe? I'm like, yes, I believe you. I'm telling you the process that we're going to do here.
Yeah.
And then, having a lawyer talk to you in a way that's understandable to you and is helpful to you is hard to do if the lawyer is just meeting you for the first time. Now, we try to pick it up quickly, and we've done it a lot, but it would be better, and I know this because I have long-standing clients that I handle crises for on a regular basis, and it works out better, just like, if you got to know a family doctor for a number of years, and you spent time with that doctor, and the doctor knew your family history and didn't have to read it off of a chart, and knew, like, certain things about you and your children, and then that doctor be able to help you better. Also, a different example, probably even a better example, if you go to the best architect in the world, the best, like this woman is amazing. She's an amazing architect. And you say, build me a house. All right. What do you like? Do you need a pool, an elevator? Do you have a handicap? Do you have children? How big a house?
Secret tunnels?
Where does it need to be? Like, do you have
Firing
cars?
range
Do you
in the
need
basement.
3 garages? Do you need a man cave? Like, unless you have an enormous amount of data dumped to that architect, they could be the best architect in the world. They're not going to do a good job for you if they just build a house. Turns out lawyers are not that different. Like, You know, especially in the problem-solving business that I'm in, if you do the same kind of thing day in and day out, if you're a slip and fall attorney or a car accident attorney, but I'm not that. I'm the lawyer you call, and you have a general business problem, and I need to know, do you have a budget for this? Do you have risk tolerance for this? What is your risk tolerance? Are you one of the people that want to roll the dice on a 1 in 10 shot to make big money, or are you one of the people that are like, unless I have a 9/10 shot at this, I'm not rolling the dice? I don't know that the first time I meet you, it turns out.
Yeah. So so it's not enough to just know of the, because this is when you say this, when you say you should know the lawyer beforehand, I think a lot of people would think, okay, I know of them, right? And I guess what you're saying is that's not the same.
No. I need to know you.
Yeah.
I need to know about your risk tolerance. I need to know what kind of things you find acceptable to bill for. You know, I don't like sending you guys bills. I
don't like it either.
I know you don't. I read them every month at the beginning of the month. I stress over them. I'm like, okay, was this reasonable billing for the work that was done? I read all the lines, and it's about 200-page short novel I get at the beginning of each month.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
It's so much
I mean,
fun.
I just things I want to do.
Yeah.
Call me next time
more
you're
fun,
doing
though?
that.
If you have a long-standing client and you have a relationship with the client and you understand this client expects to be billed for these things, they understand the work that's being done that's generated these fees, and then you're not upset when you open the bill, I'm not upset when I send the bill, everything works out. You understand the value add.
My gut just falls every time, though.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but it's because you knew.
I knew.
Yeah.
It's because you knew. If
But
you've been doing this for 10 years, you'd be like, this is a perfectly reasonable and normal bill, and I know what's going on here. Every aspect of it works out better when you have an ongoing relationship with a regular attorney. And most people would think, I need a specialist attorney. What we offer on my team is, I will find you that attorney. Like, we don't have a tax attorney at my firm. But if you need your taxes done, you need to contest something with the IRS, I will go get that attorney for you. You don't need to have a relationship with all the specialists in town. I have them. I spend a lot of time maintaining my network and maintaining who to call and who to get for the different kind of problems. And then you have a relationship with me. You trust me. I pick your expert for you and bring them back to you.
So let's
This is terrifying and fascinating.
So let's take
Story of my life.
Aaron's business, who doesn't have the proper legalese set up as far as I know.
You don't know that.
You have a limitation of liability.
Based off the
that,
story you just told me. But let's
yeah.
use him as an example. In his instance, would it make sense for him to have a simple contract in place, say your team develop it, that when he has a realtor hire him to do a photography job, he doesn't have him sign every time. He just, when he gets a new client, they sign this, or any future work, his butt is covered in instances like this.
Yes, it would. And what you first would need is a limitation of liability based on your cat story. That says, and these are enforceable if you just write them. If you don't write them, it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
That says, I am only liable for the amount of this contract. Period.
Oh, okay.
You can do that, and you can write it down, and they sign it, and it's enforceable. And then if the cat dies and the grandfather clock falls over on the same job, all they get back is the money they were going to pay you on the
because
job.
they're probably going to sue the realtor, and that realtor can probably come around and sue him.
Well, they're probably, if they're smart, going to sue both of you.
Okay.
The realtor for picking you, and you for being careless and negligent and killing the cat and the
Damn,
grandfather
Aaron.
clock.
Killed the
Everyone
cat.
cycles.
Honestly, all I heard was this cat just scream out.
Meow.
I didn't know the cat was even on the landing. It just like
Traumatic.
It
Jeez.
was like it.
So what you would want to do, though, is
I
you
could
would want
imagine
to stage this out. I mean, I understand that attorney's fees are expensive. You know,
Mhm.
all this equipment is expensive. You didn't go buy everything that everyone uses here, including that massive screen over there, all at one time.
Actually, not that
Yeah.
big. It's bigger.
Okay. All at one time. You buy out what makes sense for your business. That's part of me getting to know you. Like, I have my largest client is an 800 to 900 million, probably closer to $900 million a year client right now, and revenue, not what they pay me.
It'd be nice. You wouldn't be here right now.
But the smallest clients are, business are working out of their home, or they're individuals, and they have, the neighbors dropped a tree on their property and just left it there. Like, I mean, that kind of thing. I have a referral that I need to call back later today who needs their roof replaced. I'm going to help find him a roofer. Like, we will fit to the situation what you need. But what you would get is a master service agreement with a realtor if you have a regular realtor that you talk with. And you'd have them sign all your terms and conditions on that one time. Then every time you had a new job, they would sign a much shorter document, could be one page, that is a proposal or a work order for that job, which would reference back the terms and conditions.
Master service agreement.
That's right. Master service agreement has your terms and conditions. That proposal would have the address of the job, the time you're showing up, the amount of money you're charging for that job, and not a whole lot else.
Because right now, you just show up, and then
We just show up.
you send an invoice 6 months later.
So here's really, Aaron, what we're counting on here, since we're not compensating Buckley for his time today, is that you buy a master service agreement from his firm, and now it's paid for, right?
Because what's like, let's say worst comes to worst in his instance, the lady sues him for the like how much could he be liable for? And essentially, that
Yeah, that's
So
a
if
good
there's
question.
property damage, so it's going to be a value of the property damage.
Emotional damages.
If the property damage is bad enough that they have to move out of the house for some reason, then you're going to pay for their hotel too if you have no limitation of liability. It's a natural consequence of what you did. Like if you set the house on fire somehow while you're there with your equipment, you're going to pay for a lot of things. And you're not going to know you're paying for it for a long time because what's going to happen first, they're going to tell their homeowner's insurance. Their homeowner's insurance is going to pay for everything and fix everything, which is going to take months, especially in the current supply shortages of labor and stuff. And then they're going to pass it on to a subrogation counsel who works on contingency, who's going to come after you and your business and is not going to give up because they work on contingency and is eventually going to sue you if you don't give them a settlement. And they're going to try to recover as much as they can for whatever the insurance company paid. And they got the claim assigned to them when they paid for it by the homeowner. You may never see the homeowner again.
Yeah.
And that, just defending that, because I defend subrogation claims all the time, every day. I have 80 or so of them across the country right now for my largest client. And those people just never go away until you beat them, which is very expensive. One of the ways you can beat them is be like, because they're on contingency. This is the two people, one of them sits down to put their tennis shoes on in the African safari while they're being chased by a lion, and the other person's like, you can't outrun a lion whether you put tennis shoes on or not. I'm like, I don't have to outrun the lion, I just have to outrun you. So they're on contingency. So you just have to be not the easiest prey on their desk at any given time. Limitations of liability help with that. Master service agreements. Just the fact that you have one in your area, in your industry, would make you in a tier of harder to get, leave me alone.
And I think what's interesting about what you do in our conversations about our business is the fact that at any point, right, a year from now or 2 years from now, you could still be liable for something that's happened in the past, right? There's no statute of limitations on many of this stuff, or very limited, right?
Is there a statute of limitations?
There are statutes of limitations, but they're longer than you probably realize.
Could be 7 years, or could be,
on property damage, it's 5 years.
Oh wow,
5 years. On personal injury, it's jurisdictions are different, but 3 years is pretty typical. So what would happen though is, on the personal injury, to talk about what you're liable for, you're liable for property damage, you may be liable for the hotel and other expenses that are a natural consequence of whatever you did. If you acted with gross negligence, like, you show up and instead of just bringing along equipment, you also brought along kerosene and dropped some and then lit the house on fire.
Yeah.
Or your equipment was not properly maintained. You knew it was sparking. You went in the house anyway.
This photo's lit.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
all of that
truly.
Electromagnetism that you have, where you're always shocking yourself.
Yeah.
Then you could be on the hook for punitive damages up to $350,000 in Virginia. To teach you a lesson.
I'm very overwhelmed at this moment.
Well,
I think we sold you a
Take
new
a
master
breath.
service agreement client.
And here's the thing, right? With the fact that most small businesses or freelancers or whoever are in many cases working on a thread, right? When it comes to working capital, right? It's like, hey, maybe it's like 3 or 4 or 5 pay cycles, right, that they have worth of working capital, and the fact that at any moment you could then be sued and now be on the hook for tens of thousands of dollars,
Hundreds of thousands.
is a scary concept, right?
Right. And a lot of business owners, this comes back to another concept that I was talking with the business owner earlier today on. Business owner called me. We were talking about a different thing. I said, hey, I've been representing you for a while. What is something, I'm going to be on a podcast later today, that you've learned since we've had this relationship that you didn't realize was important? And the first thing he went to was insurance. So part of what you pay for with a general counsel that you have an ongoing relationship with is you pay for having an issue spotter. Like, you're not thinking about your insurance, okay? Or you're thinking, I've got insurance. I've got general liability insurance. I'm good. I've got like $1 million or $2 million, and I pay my premium, and I'm good. What does it actually cover? Do you know? There's a lot of things it does not cover. Right, exactly. If I send Ryan on behalf of the business because he's a friend of mine to run over to the local Target and pick up some wiring for me or something, some piece of equipment that I need, an extra mouse, who knows, and he's on the way back and he's doing an errand for my business, I'm going to compensate him in any way for that, and he gets in a car accident and he kills somebody, does my insurance cover that? Well, I couldn't tell you right now because I haven't seen your insurance policy. Are you doing something that's professional in nature? And the doing of it in professional in nature might take it completely out of your general liability policy, which might specifically exclude, and usually does, professional services. A lot of people don't understand that insurance doesn't cover what we call own work. Like if you're doing work, not so much for what you're doing, but if you're doing construction work and you build this and this breaks, falls down, needs to be completely redone. You go to your insurance company and you're like, I need to pay for the wood again. I need to pay for the labor again. I need to pay for the screws again. That is not covered under your insurance. It's not covered under any insurance. That is your own work. You just have to redo it and eat it. So there's a lot of things. People are like, oh, I have insurance. It's great. What about if you get attacked, ransomware or cyber attack? Do you think that's covered by your general liability insurance?
Nope, not.
No, it is not.
Completely
You
separate
could lose
policy.
everything. Is data important to your business? Do you
100%.
think data is important to your business?
A little bit.
Also, not just losing the data as far as interruption of your business. When you lose the data for your business, do you need to tell your clients?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like this one we a few years ago, we onboarded this new client. They had an existing website, and they had this third-party app built by a college student, and they also used some developer from Russia. But anyways, I said that word too, but we're
Right
past
out
the 15
there.
minutes.
Right out there.
But the app was collecting credit card info and address, but the entire credit card number, expiration date, CCV, were all visible.
Massive
Thousands of
violations.
credit cards.
Not just
Yeah.
visible.
Right.
All plain text.
Yeah,
So
plain text.
When
Yeah.
you break the law, it's not covered by insurance either. And when you have personal identifying information, certainly if you mess with anything involving HIPAA whatsoever, but certainly now all the Consumer Protection Acts out there, the one out of California that's really driving everyone nuts, and it's going to be the standard eventually for everybody.
Yep.
You have to take certain safeguards. And if you don't take those safeguards, you're not just doing something that's going to cause you to have a negligence suit. You're going to be pursued by a government agency at some point, and that is not going to be covered by insurance. And the attorney you have to hire is not going to be covered by insurance.
And it'll be expensive too.
So let me ask you this: you have a lot of confrontation with a lot of people, I'm assuming.
It's pretty much the job. I
Yeah.
actually get paid just to confront people so that managers
Just
don't
to yell
have
at
to
people all
sometimes.
day.
Yeah.
Well, it's not yelling, but
So how do you
Arguing.
firm
constructively
instruction.
so how do you approach constructive confrontation?
So one thing I try to remind myself a lot is litigation is a tool.
Mm-hmm.
It is not an outcome. Suing for the sake of suing does nothing. Getting angry for the sake of getting angry does nothing for anyone. So what we're all really trying to do is get a deal done to resolve the conflict. And the way that you need to think about that when you're talking with someone, even if someone's really angry with you, even if someone feels like they've been really wronged, is I need this person at some point to agree with me. And so you're just working to agreement. I need them, whether they realize it themselves or not, eventually I need the person I'm talking to agree with me. So you don't slight them, you're not sarcastic to them, you're not mean to them. There are a lot of attorneys who do not believe in this approach, but I do. And I've actually lost a major client once early in my career because he said I was too nice. And I don't think I'm too nice. I think I'm exactly the right level of nice, but of course everybody thinks that.
Yeah.
But there's no reason to attack your opponent. I try to teach my 9-year-old, my 11-year-old when they're sometimes not playing as nice as I'd like them to with their opponent. They're like, I'm better than them. I'm like, you want them to be better than you, and you want to beat them anyway. That's more impressive. If you beat up on a 2-year-old in a football game in the backyard, is that more impressive than if you beat a 14-year-old in the backyard? That is more impressive. You need the other side to be built up, to feel comfortable, to feel confident, and then agree with whatever you
Very
need them to
humble of
agree
you.
to. Well, working
Steel
on that.
man.
Yeah.
So you're steel manning your opponent?
You want to build them up, and you want them to feel like you want to find a way that they won. You want them to feel like they can walk away from whatever it is and feel like they won something. Now, they're not going to win everything, but
Right.
you want them to find something that can feel like they won.
Interesting.
And that's interesting
This
too
is
because
very
you're
interesting
It's the art of war.
Yeah,
like-
I mean,
But it's Inception.
yeah, you're playing in a highly emotional place,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
In an industry, and you're getting it from both sides, right? So you're getting it from your client, right? Which we've been highly emotional in our scenarios, and then you're getting it from the opposing client, right? And I can even hear it in his voice, right? It's just like this steady tempo, right, of a voice.
Try to stay there.
That's like that calmness that you have to, obviously be. And the analogy, I think you've used this in the past, but it's kind of the way I think about you is like the wolf from Pulp Fiction, right?
Okay.
From the sense that it's like this sense of like, okay, there's trust, right?
Mhm.
And you're calling someone that you believe in, that you trust in. and then immediately will bring a rational approach to a highly emotional and volatile situation, right?
Yeah, the phrase, only a fool is his own lawyer. If you try to serve as your own lawyer, even as a lawyer, you shouldn't try to serve as your own lawyer, because there's so much psychology on outcome bias. If you want a certain outcome, you see all kinds of evidence, circumstantial or otherwise.
You believe
evidence.
people believe
You're
what they want to
This
believe.
supports me. This supports me. You could be faced with evidence that directly contradicts you, but because you really, and normally by the time you're calling me, it's confirmation bias and outcome bias. Normally by the time you're calling me, you have something you already feel pretty passionate about. Now, I'd like to fix that. I'd like you guys to talk to me on a regular basis and fork over the 1 hour of billable time every 3 months or so to have like a check-in with your lawyer and be like, hey, we've hired a bunch of new employees. Have you crossed through an OSHA threshold? Are you now in OSHA land? We need a different handbook. We need different things in the handbook.
When do we crawl over to OSHA land?
16 employees,
Okay.
buddy.
So it's free legal
We got
advice.
some time. We got some time.
Yeah, so there are different things you need then. You need like certain safety devices. You need certain things posted. There's like that kind of check-in that comes over time. But the real money to keep the lights on at my firm comes from when you have some kind of bigger problem. You need to pay my team to deal with it in a more constructive way. And again, it's constructive. So many clients come in and they're like, I want you to crush them. I want you to be a pit bull. I want you to go after them. And I'm like, we want them to agree with us. Well, that's what we want, actually. Because this is not a place where the way that we resolve conflict is we go kill their son, or kneecap them.
Yeah.
This is not that kind of place, right? I use extreme examples to try to get people to refocus on what's really going to happen at the end of this. What's the resolution going to be? Well, I can tell you what it's going to be. In 99 out of 100 matters, there's going to be a document that you're going to sign and they're going to sign. And there's going to be something you do that we're going to call uncle on, and they're going to call uncle on. That is going to happen most of the time. Now, we can do it later after you've vented for a really long time and they've vented for a really long time and you've paid me a lot of money. Or we can try to start from a place of that's the goal from the beginning.
Very expensive therapist.
Yeah, and
Yes.
that's.
I really feel like I should go back to school for psychology doing this job for the last 13 years.
And you end up with, like any negotiation, right? Things that you didn't want to have happen that you have to kind of concede, right? And then they have to concede.
Well, because
right?
clients lie. I mean, you all lie. You don't realize you're lying, but you all lie because you all have outcome bias and you have confirmation bias. And you're like, look, we got all this in writing and it's written in these emails. And then we go back through 100 emails and you're like, it never actually says that.
It's a truth that exists in our own mind.
In your own
right?
mind,
and,
right.
Yeah.
And it's our truth, and we 100% believe it, but from an
you've
outside
got to understand that
perspective.
the other side has its own truth too.
Yeah.
And in construction defect litigation or multiple car accident or whatever, there's like maybe 15 truths out there.
Yeah.
You know?
People are wild. The constructs.
That's why you
that
love
we-
them so much. You love people.
Yeah, I love people so much. People are wild. The
It's on video
constructs
now.
that we build in our mind and like the way we come to ideas is just mind blowing to me.
You
And we're all susceptible to it.
Right.
Lawyers
Every
are too.
si-
That's
yeah,
why
every
if I had a
single one of
major
us.
legal dispute, I'd go hire a lawyer. Am I capable of handling most kinds of legal disputes? Yes, but I would go hire a lawyer because I understand I'm going to see it my way and I'm not going to have an accurate view, a real view that helps me get to a real goal.
Are you allowed to hire in your firm, or is that a conflict of interest?
You can.
Yeah.
You can.
But
you
when
know, if
they
it was
have
a
the
dispute
same
with my firm, I
Yeah.
would get a different lawyer.
Right.
But no, you can hire inside your firm.
So you mentioned one thing, which I believe we added to our contract. So having a master service agreement is one thing, but you still can be sued. But then now you, like, for example, Aaron gets this contract and someone does sue him. Now he still has to pay you to defend him. But
a lot less.
a lot less. But isn't there, you said you added just a simple sentence in there to where if someone does sue you, they agree to pay your attorney's fees.
Yeah. So one common thing that I just know this, and other attorneys know this. I forget sometimes that not every business owner out there, every layperson, not a lawyer, doesn't know this. People just assume, why I was wronged. Even if you're on the plaintiff side, you're doing the suing, I should be able to get my attorney's fees to be made whole. And it makes sense. I understand why it makes sense. That is not the American default rule. The American default rule is you pay your own costs to get your outcome. You pay for your own expert costs. You pay for your own attorney's fees. If you have a court reporter, you pay for that. The filing fee with the court. I mean, all kinds of things you pay for, unless you do one simple thing. And that is with whomever you are dealing with. It could be a landlord. It could be a tenant. It could be a customer. It could be a supplier. It could be employees. you write down that we agree in advance that if we have a lawsuit over this, or I even engage an attorney to fight over this, all my attorney's fees and costs are part of my damages and you owe them. If you write that down and get the other side to sign it, then you can pursue it. Now, here's another thing. Sorry, I have some other bad news. Other people probably don't have the money to pay you them, is a realistic possibility. But all we're doing here is sort of Cold War kind of tactics. We are stacking up all of our tanks and missiles and gunboats and airplanes and saying, we have all these. We will win.
Mutual assured destruction.
Well,
right,
but actually, you
Deterrence.
actually want to do deterrence, right? You
Yeah.
want to do deterrence. So the other side will stack up what it has. If afterward they don't have as many missiles and tanks and ships as you do, you generally get a better deal. And again, we're still reaching a deal. That's what
Yeah,
we're doing. That's
yeah.
the goal. So, if you don't have a contract, you don't have an attorney's fees provision, you don't have a limitation of liability, you don't have an indemnity provision, whatever the different things are that apply to the situation, the other side might have more missiles and tanks than you do. And then they get a better deal, So
it's not as much about destruction as it is deterrence. And it's the idea that, hey, if you don't have these things stacked up, you just make yourself a target, like more of
Right.
a willing target.
But having that simple sentence is just
that's a huge
adding
piece
another-
of leverage.
it's like
huge piece
a
of leverage.
big tank. It's like a
Yeah.
Abrams tank versus a T-72.
That's a very big piece of leverage because, say the dispute for a lot of businesses that I work with, the thing they're selling, maybe for you, I know for you guys, for some of the websites I've seen, you're selling something that costs $5,000, $7,000, $10,000. Okay, so generally for brand new clients that I don't already know and see on a regular basis, the retainer is $5,000 and we're spending that money. Just to get going on a piece of litigation that's actually in dispute.
Yep.
You're going to spend in litigation as much as $20,000 a month on major piece of litigation. There's construction litigation going on in Louisville right now where the combined spend is probably close to $1 million a month, not just on my firm, but on other things. The leverage point becomes the attorney's fees. I mean, you could have a dispute over $10,000 that you really need, talking about small business owners being on thin margins.
Mhm.
You really need that customer to pay that $10,000. They're far more likely to pay that $10,000 if in the demand letter that I send the customer, you owe $10,000 and the clock is running right now and got bigger while I wrote this demand letter, which I'll sometimes write in the demand letter.
And their liability
your
is going
liability is going up.
Yeah.
So we do this math. We do this. It's a way of convincing people. It's a way of convincing my own clients sometimes. Okay, so you think you're right. All right. You think you are 80% likely to win in court. All right. Well, it's a $10,000 bill. So that means if you settle for $2,000 or less, you're breaking even. If you settle for $1,500, you've won because you have a 20% chance of losing a $10,000 loss. $1,500 is a steal. Take it. And normally we're making a deal. And I tell clients this very early on. If you're owed $10,000 and you're coming to me, unless you're like, I'm going to die on this hill, you're making a deal for less than $10,000. That's how deals work.
Yep.
So we're making some kind of deal. And we want to make the deal as enticing to the other party as possible. And that generally involves scaring them, frankly. Saying, look, it's $10,000 for the debt and already $2,000 for attorney's fees. You're at 12. Next month it'll be 14. Month after that it'll be 20 because I'm drafting and filing the lawsuit. We get off this train whenever you're ready. Call me back. They generally call. And then you're very nice to them. You're very nice to them. You're like, I'm so glad you called. Thank you so much for calling. Let's talk about
Very
a deal
passive
here.
aggressive.
Oh,
I think
man.
it's just aggressive. I think it's aggressive.
Just
It's aggressive
not
with a
aggressive.
calm voice
Yeah.
is what it is.
Right.
It's,
Calming influence.
the Zen bulldog.
There was a skit of Superman and Batman arguing in interrogation, and the scary part was Superman was trying to be evil and was trying to scare the Joker,
Oh,
and then Batman was being really nice. He's like, "Would you like some coffee?
yeah.
Would you like this?" And he started smiling and goes, "Okay, I'll tell you everything."
Yeah. Yeah.
That's scary.
So you need to have a goal conversation with your client. Another thing is most clients, especially clients that are new to hiring lawyers, don't actually know what their goal is. They know they've been wronged. They know they're upset. They don't have a goal. I want to sue them. Okay, not a goal.
Yeah.
Let's try this again.
What's what's the best, I guess, how should I put this? What is the best outcome for someone to be looking for?
It really depends. It's a very factual, specific thing.
Yeah.
Very factual, specific thing.
Yeah.
If I'm defending a company, matter I got today that does safety equipment in a high-rise building in Maryland that had a fire and a fatality and 40 injuries and a lot of property damage. The best outcome is we don't get sued and we keep the customer. We keep coming back and doing their inspections for their safety equipment. That's the best possible outcome. Is that a likely outcome in that scenario? Well, you're not going to get it if you call up the property manager or the property manager's lawyer and you scream at them and say, it's not my fault, it's not my client's fault. You guys are idiots. How could you possibly think it's our fault? What you do is I'll probably get in a car next week or the week after and drive there, and I'll have a conversation with them and I'll explain, look, this is what we do, and the alarms went off, the sprinkler system's activated. That's what they're supposed to do, and someone died because it was a fire in an apartment started by one of the residents. We didn't start the fire, and we put it out as quickly as we could. The fire department showed up, and this is how it worked. We're not actually liable for this. You can sue us if you want, and if you feel you need to do that, we'll defend. But probably not going to go anywhere. You're probably not going to win. Also have a contract which limits our liability. Also have a contract that says we get our attorney's fees when you sue us. So you're going to have some downside risk. But maybe a good outcome would be we'll do your inspections for next year for free and get a release. Oh, it happened to happen with me.
And that's your win.
There you go.
That's your
There
win.
You go.
So that might be a win.
That's
in
what
that
they
scenario.
agree.
Yeah.
But that's what you can get them to agree on.
Maybe. But you
Maybe.
got to have a goal conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So many people come in, they don't have a goal. They think they have a goal, but it's not actually a goal. It's not an outcome. And then so many people come in that say, some of them are in this room, that I've never had this happen before. I've been in business for X number of years and I've just never had this happen before. It is eerily similar to people driving around without a seatbelt on in their car. No airbag, no safety check, never get their car checked out, never do regular maintenance on it, and then the car crashes and they get horribly injured. And, I've been driving for 6 years and I've never had a problem. I haven't had a car accident in over 10 years. I still put the seatbelt on every day. It's not because I'm some kind of paranoid freak. It's just a good idea. Most businesses are driving around without a lawyer checking on things from time to time. And it's only a matter of time they will have a car accident. And then there'll be some business that makes it 30 years and never does. Great. There are people that drive their whole lives and don't have a car accident. Should we remove all seatbelts from cars?
No.
So we've talked a lot about reactive. What about being proactive, right? So like for all the business owners listening in, what are the action steps of setting up? Like, because you were saying, hey, like, it's more expensive to put out these major fires versus calling me up every quarter.
Yeah.
Right. And so can you explain that?
Yeah. So issue spotting is a big thing. I walk into a business and I see all kinds of things that are just issues to me immediately. Like you go to some businesses and they have no ADA accommodations. They have no painted parking spots. They have no signs. It's like, that's an ADA claim waiting to happen. And when it happens, it's going to wreck them because it's not going to be covered by insurance and they don't even know that.
Right.
Things like that. So issue spotting. So I can just come to your business. I can talk with you. I can get to know what you're doing. What in particular are the things you worry about? What kind of disputes you've had with customers in the past? And then I can help draft. See, the thing about contracts, they're not just about an economic deal. They're about rules for playing together. It's like going in the backyard with a ball, no one knowing how to play football and being like, we're all going to play right now. And then people all just do their different thing and they're running around and screaming. And some people are saying that's not fair and that's not fair. And no one knows what's fair because there are no rules and no one knows what they are. We get to make the rules for playing together in advance. We get to make the rules for stopping playing together in advance. That's preventative.
Right.
That's massively preventative. If we could do that, and we can start from a template, but then we can refine it to your specific business to get it really dialed in to what your rules are for playing in your backyard. Right. So I have rules on the wall in my man cave basement, because I do have a man cave basement or I wouldn't survive, for playing 8-ball.
Yeah.
Because everybody has different scratch rules. Everybody
Bar
has
rules,
different,
whatever.
can you put a foot on the ground or 2 feet on the
You
ground?
just point to the sign, say
I
this
have
is the house
a printed
rules.
sign
This is
in a
house-
frame.
house rules,
These are this house's rules. If we
Nice.
want to play by different rules, we can go to your house. But in this house, these are the rules. And then nobody can say afterward, well, I didn't know that was a scratch. I'm like, yes, you did. In 12-point font right here.
Times New Roman double space.
It says, see the terms of the terms and conditions you already agreed to walking in.
But I mean the same thing with football. You're going to go out in the backyard. You're going to play a pickup game of football. You're going to have to come up with some rules. Are we going to do first down and 2 catches? Are we going to draw a line somewhere? Are we going to play 4 downs? Are we going to do 2-hand touch? Do some of them have flags? What size ball are we going to use? I mean, there's all kinds of rules. We generally know what the rules of football are. I generally could provide you with a terms and conditions master services agreement.
Right.
It would be okay. When I spend that time with you and I get to know your business, how many employees you have, what kind of troubles you face, what kind of things people complain about in your business, if you have supplier issues. If I'm working for a major manufacturer, the biggest issue is often suppliers, not customers.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm working with you guys, it might be because you're a service, your customers, your referral sources, real estate agents. What do we write about that? How do we start and end that relationship? A general terms and conditions you pull off of Google doesn't know you, isn't going to know you, even if you stare at it all day long, and isn't going to refine it. So the preventative stuff is, one, have some rules, and then refine them. Well, refining takes time, getting to know each other. Right. That's why I'm not at all worried that AI is going to replace me anytime soon.
No,
it's not a thing. It also does not understand. It understands cold, logical outcomes and maybe probabilities of them, but it can't sit in a room with someone, say, I understand that you think you're right. You might be right. Here are the consequences of continuing to doing what you're doing. We can keep having a war, and you'll have casualties, and I'll have casualties, and maybe in 14 months you'll win it, or maybe you won't. We could settle it now, though.
Yeah.
For this, how about that?
That emotional intelligence that's required in what you do. And one more thing on that. So, I think what's particularly interesting in our conversations we've had is the idea of, you think about when you hire an employee, the idea of hiring tough and managing easy, like expectations up front being strong. And then from like a legal sense, building on your question, if you have all of these safeguards in place, you can then in the negotiation process decide what you're going to...
You can pull back.
Yeah, you can decide, hey, we're not going to enforce that element of this, right?
So one thing that people feel kind of is one way, and it is one way. That's okay if you hired me. Is the one-way attorney's fees clause I talked about. It's very easy to flip a few words in that phrase and have it be a mutual attorney's fees clause, where if they win in the dispute, whatever it is, they get their attorney's fees. Well, now you've given away some of the leverage, but maybe you need to do that to get this customer, and you really want this customer.
Yep.
Maybe they just feel like it's fundamentally unfair for them to only owe attorney's fees but never be able to collect them. They actually catch that because they actually read the terms and conditions. Most of them won't. But if they do, great. We can change that like that. Or if I know your business and I know the kind of risk that your business takes, like my largest client that does things that put out fires and really big risks in high-rise buildings, I might come back to them and say, I know you really want this customer, but we're not removing the limitation of liability. We'll double it, but we're not just striking it. Like, it's just not happening because you have to sell an enormous number of fire inspections to be able to make up for a single loss.
Yeah.
And when I put it that way to a manager that I'm talking to in Maryland or Georgia or Texas or wherever it is, I'm like, so, Dan, how many $400 or $4,000 inspections do you have to sell to make up for a $25 million building burning down? Let's do the math. I'll get my calculator out. Do you have time? We can do it. Limitation of liability, man. It's happening. Like,
It's happening.
Please. And you'll get caught up in, I want to make this sale. I want to get this client. It's a big client. I'm gonna get $5,000 in the inspections here every year. I'm gonna put them on a 5-year contract. I'm like, okay, that's good. That's a good inspection contract. And how many times would you have to do that over again if someone dies in the building and they sue you for $10 million?
Oof.
Like, how many times? Okay, so let's limit the damages. Let's do that.
So I have two more things I want to talk about, and then I know we have a hard stop. ADA compliance. It has come to our attention now that websites have to be ADA compliant. Before, it was mostly Jim mentioned this before, that because he had a client happen to him. If you have a retail location and a website, your obviously retail location has to be ADA compliant, and that's usually done with the property manager or whoever owns the building. But the website also has to be ADA compliant, and their website was not ADA compliant. Now we're starting to see, hasn't happened to any of our clients. The websites, vast majority of them are not ADA compliant, but we now have the software that we sell that makes the website ADA compliant. It's called Accessibility. There's other companies like it where it's this little plugin at the bottom, and it gives you every option imaginable under the sun. So essentially, it's like another, as you said, battle tank for the business owner, because they mentioned that a lot of businesses now, I guess this is the new cash grab for the attorneys that like to go after this. They send demand letters to websites. Your website was not ADHD or gave my client a seizure, and most people are just selling out of court. Sorry, not selling out, but just settling and paying $20,000 to $50,000 fees. Some go to court cases, I guess, because they just don't want to fight them. But the idea was having this plugin to protect you. Not all the websites have it. I believe it's on us to make the websites ADA compliant. Especially some of these websites are like 5+ years old.
So obviously in our space, ADA compliance has been around forever, right? Like as long as there's been websites, right? But what's been particularly frustrating is the move to, because to Ryan's point, it was always like, hey, if you had a physical location, right, that was the most important element to this. And now with, everything that happened in 2020, right, and the fact that almost everybody's interacting with a brand online now, the enforcement has become much more strict across all sites, right?
Right.
And so, one area that we should probably discuss at some point, right, is the professional liability of, hey, okay, if we get a client that vehemently disagrees with paying for this piece of software, right, what would the necessary steps be for us to say we're not liable because we have said this is what you need to do on your site. We're professionally recommending this, and you're choosing not to?
Right, so this is a great example of what I was talking about earlier. You could go online all day and you could get like the best legal written master service agreement ever.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a general master service agreement. It's like hiring the best architect in the world but telling them nothing about what you need in your home.
Right.
If we don't have that relationship and you talk about what your need is, I don't know that you're a website design business, then you don't even know necessarily as a business owner. Now, these two are aware of it.
Yep.
Props to you. But lots of business owners don't even know what they don't know. They don't even know they need to go look for that kind of form. And what we would do is we would build into your master service agreement or your customer contract an exception that's a waiver that says we are going to make recommendations to you. If you don't take one of our recommendations, then you've waived any legal recourse for not taking one of our recommendations. Then we make really sure we made that recommendation.
Yep.
Or you do a standalone waiver. So I do this sometimes for, again, the fire suppression company. They inspect, say, a portion of the building, but because it's a retail building and part of it's being used, they say you can't go in there. We got customers in there, you can't go in there. But we're doing our inspection. We need to see that. We can't see that. So they will sometimes call me, and it's sort of an urgent thing. And now we have one built in, and they can grab it real easy. But for a while, it was, we need a waiver for this address, for this portion of the building, and we need it today because we're here, and we can't go into this portion of the building. You're not letting us look at it. It's behind a locked door, and we don't know if the fire equipment in there meets code or is broken or anything. So then we would get them a document, and we'd say, okay, before you leave, have them sign this and say that they didn't let you in that portion of the building. Because it's not just the business owner you're worried about. For you guys, it's a third-party claim for ADA. It's the patrons, the customers.
Yep.
Pizza delivery guy.
Yep.
Whoever is in there when the fire happens. So you need a waiver. You need a document that says you're not going to be liable for this, and indeed, you, business owner, are going to indemnify me if I get sued for some reason for not doing this thing that I recommended you do. It's only fair. And normally people will sign those because you recommend it, and they say, no, I don't want to pay for it, or I don't want you to look at it, or whatever the reason is. They sign it, and then we've made the rules of the game. We have the rules. They're the house rules.
Yep.
These are the house rules for here.
Well,
so
and
we need to have a convo on that.
Yeah, and to that point, right? You were just talking about liability insurance, right? And I know that we have a rider on our liability insurance policy that's a professional insurance, right? And that's like an element that you don't always think about being in a service industry, Aaron, right? And providing a professional service for people that now you're creating a situation where their liability also could become your liability, right? Somebody used the website for nefarious reasons, right? That we built for them, and then we could become liable for that.
That's a big one too in cybersecurity for nefarious reasons, or
right.
Like web hosting. It's like you agree not to have any malicious intent, and if you do, you will be liable for any damages to other companies.
Also, if you guys receive any IP to put on websites that's actually stolen or simply not paid for in some way, then the holder of that IP can come after you, and you don't even know it. So you want language that says, if someone comes after me for stuff you gave me,
these were materials that were provided by the client.
You're going to indemnify me for that. If you don't have that written down, then you don't have that indemnity.
I was a lawyer. I have. He's been in the space for about 30 years for IT and cybersecurity. And recommendations, what you said earlier. He said, at the end of the day, that's what you do. You're an IT consultant. Even though you're a managed service provider, you're still consulting. So even if you give recommendations and they say no, they can't come after you for it.
Right.
Like, so that's a very good advice.
I'm still going after you, Cody.
Bring it on.
I know where you live.
I don't know.
So
Going against Tim's kind of scary.
I know.
Because he's got the soft, silky voice.
Trying to
And
get
It's
he doesn't have to be
It's
the loudest person
the
in the
radio
room.
for the radio voice.
So that's
to end this
Like,
podcast,
You're gonna go 6 feet underground.
I know you got 10 minutes, but I would say the next 5 minutes, you gave a phenomenal 5-minute presentation on DUI,
Oh gosh, yes.
on what to do, and it blew me away as far as just how to handle the police officer in that situation, what to do, what not to do. Can you explain the whole what
You're
you
supposed
should
to
do
run,
from a
right?
lawyer? Yeah, that's exactly what you're supposed to do.
No, you should not do
What
that.
should in the state of Virginia? Because I know it's probably
So
different.
that was a stand-up.
was great.
5 minutes, but I can't do it as well. Not standing up. I'm a mover. But so for DUIs, I'm not a criminal defense attorney. But again, I'm not a specialist in anything. If you want a specialist, I'll go find them for you. But I am not a specialist. But it's kind of fun to learn how to deal with certain things from time to time. And I have volunteered on 3 occasions, I think, to go to the local police academy and be someone who drinks on the police academy's dime, and then has cadets come through and test you and do field sobriety tests and determine whether or not they would arrest or not arrest. And they don't know how much you've had to drink. And I rarely get arrested. And I'm always over the legal limit. Way over the legal limit. They drive you there and drive you home, so there's no driving for me. But there's a lot of drinking.
Oh, so you
So,
drink.
so
It's
this
not, you're
is
not
a
just playing a skit. You're actually
No,
drinking.
I'm actually getting
that's kinda-
drunk.
That's kind of fun. I want to do that.
And I drink bourbon the whole
Yeah.
time. I did 14 shots once before 11 in the morning.
And
then
then
they cut you off.
Yeah.
And then you go into another room and they don't know how much you've had, and they walk you through the field
they're-
sobriety
yep.
test. It's helpful to be in shape for this, just FYI. But even if you're not in shape,
So
half
you're
of
doing burpees, right?
half of the field sobriety test is following the instructions exactly as they were provided to you. So, an officer sets you up and says, I'm going to do a walk and turn. Listen to the instructions before you start. Drunk people just start walking and turning because you've heard you're going to do a walk and turn. And then you're like, okay. And then the line's right in front of you. They set you in front of the line. You're going to walk this line. Like, don't start until I finish telling you the instructions. That's half the test. Follow the instructions.
Mm.
And they'll do that for like 3 different things. They'll do the leg up, the foot up, and hold your foot. They'll say, okay, I'm going to have you in a minute put your foot up and hold it still for a count of 10 while looking at me. Drunk people just start putting their foot up. No, not right now. You've already gotten marks off on your score for the
I
field
think
sobriety
that
test.
I would fail that test being completely sober.
Because you just weren't
I
listening.
listened to the first thing and I've run.
Yeah.
So that's the thing too. You can tell the officer you have all kinds of issues, and it's usually being recorded with body cams now and with the front of the cruiser, the dash cam, and you say, I have really bad balance. I have an injury in my ankle.
I have ADHD and
I have
don't-
ADHD.
Yeah.
I take medications which make it hard for me to speak clearly. I mean, you can just get all that out there. All kinds of reasons why you should not fail this field sobriety test or have to take it even. But follow the instructions. The number one thing, as soon as you get pulled
Don't
over.
reject it.
So so that's actually a thing that you should think about real hard. Are you going to fail it? Did you have too much to drink? Would you like a DUI or would you like refusal to comply? Which one's worse? Refusal to comply is a charge, and you can refuse a breathalyzer, you can refuse this field sobriety test, you can just be like, arrest me. You're going to get arrested. It's going to happen.
Right.
But the charge might be ultimately less. Now, just by refusing to comply and not getting a breathalyzer doesn't mean you can't be convicted of a DUI. You can still be convicted of a DUI, but you're not providing evidence to help them convict you of a DUI. If you've been driving and you've had too much to drink and you get pulled over, you should not do a breathalyzer because you're just going to give them the evidence. If you know you've had too much to drink, to get yourself a DUI.
What if you just have like 1 or 2 drinks?
Okay, so different people are different. You
Right.
got to understand your blood alcohol level. If you volunteer with the Richmond Police Department,
You'll
they
know.
measure your blood alcohol level after every drink with a breathalyzer that they've just checked. Another thing that people don't know about, I could take a breathalyzer that has new batteries in it and a breathalyzer that's been used for 3 or 4 hours with the same batteries, blow one, blow the other, one after the other. They're like
2 different
15-second tests.
results.
Two different results. Different results that can be a difference between a .07 and a .09. One
Wow.
of these gets you a felony. One of these does not.
Hmm.
So you got to be real careful about that. When did you last calibrate that, officer? When did you last change the batteries in that? How many times have you used it tonight? I'd be asking questions. But follow the instructions, half the test. for each part, from the moment they walk up to your window, are you following instructions? Part of the defense, if a criminal defense attorney takes you in and puts the officer on the stand someday and you're actually contesting this, which you're probably not, but if you really needed to, because you needed your license, it was a third DUI, something like that, they're going to be, did my client follow all the instructions? It's going to be a question. It's going to be asked. And the officer's probably not going to lie. Officers are really, they get a bad rap sometimes. They're not really trying to arrest people that aren't in need of arrest. They're really not. And they're going to answer those questions truthfully the vast majority of the time. You know how you can help yourself with that? Same thing I was talking about earlier, when you have an opponent and you're trying to get them to agree with you as the ultimate goal. Don't be a jerk to the officer. Like, be really nice to the officer. Officer, I understand why you had to pull me over. I'm standing here. Let me know what I need to do. How can I comply? One of the questions that's going to be asked when you contest this someday, or you might contest this someday, is, did my client comply with all your questions? Were they polite? Were they kind? Did they try to run? Did they resist in any way? All these questions are going to be asked. The officer's going to be like, no, they're totally fine. Judge is going to like that. Judge is going to feel like that's the kind of behavior that I want to hear from citizens when they get pulled over. All this is going to be the outcome, but you know it's going to be the outcome. So when you talk, when your lawyer talks to the Commonwealth's attorney, they're going to say, when we get in court, the officer's going to say they followed instructions. The officer's going to say that they complied with everything. They're going to say that they were polite, that they were eager to comply. That all makes it more likely the Commonwealth's attorney pleads it down to reckless driving or speeding or equipment malfunction. So you need to be setting yourself up for all those things. But follow the instructions. Be very careful. If you don't understand an instruction for any reason whatsoever, if you think there's any chance whatsoever you don't understand the instruction, this is not a race. Like, stop. Officer, did I hear you say this? Is this what I'm supposed to do? And then do it. Also, it doesn't hurt to practice. Walk-in turns, pretty easy. You can practice them in your office.
The best practice is go to police academy, get drunk on government's time.
Volunteer. They do it twice a year. You can get on a list.
Oh, please share that link.
I can get you on a list for that.
Yes.
You go, people drink wine, people bring margaritas, they'll serve you some of the basic things like bourbon and beer and stuff like that behind the counter.
How many times did you do it? Like how many times?
I think I've done it 3 times.
So is it just one time so you get drunk and then they only do one interview a day?
Oh, no.
Like how many times a day?
Okay, so I understand your question now. I've gone 3 times for a day. You're there all day.
Right.
They don't let you leave until your blood alcohol content drops back down below 0.08. And then they drive you anyway. And I have gone for 3 full days, I believe. It might have been 2, but I think it's 3. And I think I was tested by a group of cadets. You get 2 to 4 groups that they kind of vote together. They kind of huddle up.
Yeah.
And they're young, and they're all like, trying really, really hard. This is like a final exam for them. And I think the least I was ever tested was 4 times, and the most I was ever tested was 6.
What different methods did you try? Did you try like just shutting up the whole time and going, lawyer?
So,
how
they will arrest you for that. And
Right,
my goal, at least when I do it, is to not get arrested.
Okay.
And I only get arrested about 1 in 4 times. And I blowed as much as 0.18, 0.17, way over the legal limit. Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah.
That's a fun time.
So we got like a minute or so here because he's got to go.
I got to go. I have children.
I don't know if we have time for this question, but if you could give, it seems like one of the biggest things that you do is listening, right? What is your approach in listening to someone who is extremely emotionally charged?
So the main thing to do, and one of the main things that I feel like is my role on my team of 8, is being the calmest person in the room, no matter what's going on. Building's on fire. I got a call once in January of 2020. Person had just run over a pedestrian in another jurisdiction of the state and drug him for a city block. Didn't know they were under there.
Oh my gosh.
Big work truck. Doesn't go well. Victim was 64. She survived. She's real tough.
Wow.
Got put on the phone, and they were like, hey, I was watching Cinderella with my boys for the first time. And they were like, hey, we have a person. They just ran over someone for a city block. It's on dash cam. And they didn't realize it. And they're talking to the police, and we got to know what to do. We don't know what to do. Do we drug test them? Do we take their keys? What do we do? I mean, just asking obviously stupid questions. Of course, you take their keys. But the managers were just like freaking out, and they knew it was going to be a major lawsuit. It had just happened minutes ago, and they're freaking out. And you're like, boys, pause the movie. And then you just stay calm. And when you can help people in a crisis calm down and know that there is a plan, there just is a plan. I don't know what it is right now, but we're going to come up with a plan. It's going to work out. You can really be a person they call on in crisis in the future. And that is the most satisfying thing about this job, is being able to help people in a crisis and just stay calm. So you just need to stay calm. Literally, you don't even have to have a plan. You just be like, I'm going to come up with a plan after we get off the phone. I don't have one right now.
I'll watch Cinderella first.
But, we're going to have a plan for this. It's going to work out. It's okay. You've called the right number. I'm going to get on this right now. I have a team of competent people. We're going to solve this problem as best as it can be solved. So you just want to be the calmest person in the room. In negotiations, you want to be the calmest person in the room too.
Be
like
zen.
your Batman interrogation earlier. I guess it works for some people sometime to get really angry and get really jump up and down and be frustrated. I assure you, if you do that with me, I'm not going to believe anything you say. I'm just going to be like,
calmer you
this
are, the
person
scarier you
doesn't.
can be.
Yeah, this person is freaked out and they're not thinking clearly, and so they have no credibility with me.
They have a weak position.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
So I feel like we could talk for a whole nother hour
yeah.
on this. So
I really appreciate you
this
guys
is
having me
exciting.
on.
thank
This
you
is
for
really
being
cool.
here.
It's great.
thank you for coming.
Yeah, this very, very, very good conversation.
Yeah.
I love your approach to listening, and your approach to conflict, and getting someone to agree with you. And there was one more thing.
You gotta have goals.
Yeah.
Like litigation isn't a goal.
Yeah, having
Fighting
a goal.
isn't a goal.
Having a goal, and I guess identifying the goal. I was trying to ask you how do you formulate your goal?
You just
But-
you keep helping people understand that the things that they initially talk about are not goals, and
Okay.
then they refocus to I don't know what your goal is. I
Yeah.
use the analogy, and this I'll have to close with. I use the analogy that I'm a waiter at a restaurant. I didn't make the food. I'm not going to make the food. I can make recommendations about the food. I know something about the food. I know something about the prices on the menu and what you might like or not. If you come in multiple times, I'm going to know better. So let's have that relationship.
Yeah.
But aside from that, I'm not eating the food at the end of the day. So you need to tell me, do you really like chicken, or is it a salmon thing for you? Like, I need to know that from you. But, a goal is not, I'm going to fight about it. Like, a goal is eating
Yeah.
the chicken.
Yeah.
So I need to get to the goal. And a lot of people come in with, I want to sue someone. I want to hurt someone. I want someone to, suffer. I'm like, these are not goals.
Yeah.
These are not goals. I
That's
need a
stuff you see on
goal.
TV.
Yeah.
Yeah, I need a goal.
So
Awesome.
more
Thank
than
you.
anything, Aaron needs a master service agreement. It's one thing we learned on this
All right.
podcast.
All right.
So, again, thanks for tuning into the Think Fresh Move Forward podcast. We'll see you next week. Next week's episode, we're talking about how to start a business on a shoestring budget.
All
As you're
right.
bootstrapping. So, thanks again.